An elementary school teacher was giving a drawing class to a group of 6-year-old children. At the back of the classroom sat a little girl who normally didn't pay much attention in school. In the drawing class, she did. For more than 20 minutes, the girl sat with her arms curled around her paper, totally absorbed in what she was doing. The teacher found this fascinating. Eventually, she asked the little girl what she was drawing. Without looking up, the girl said, "I'm drawing a picture of God." Surprised, the teacher said, "But nobody knows what God looks like." The girl said, "They will in a minute." Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 20 of What's Tom Reading? The quote you just heard was from the inspiring book, The Element, How Finding Your Passion Changes Everything by Ken Robinson. This book is all about digging deep to find out what you're truly talented at and passionate about, and how to overcome the obstacles that keep us from getting there. It sounds a little hokey, I'll admit, but I got a lot out of this book, and I think you will too. Stay tuned and enjoy the show. All right, guys, I am really excited about today's show. Now, you might be saying to yourself, wow, Tom sure is reading a lot of self-help sounding books these days, to which I have to respond, yeah, I noticed that as well. It's not something I really set out to do, and it's not exactly my favorite genre of book, but these books were each recommended to me by different people who I respect, or in some cases, I stumbled upon something the author did or said that made me curious about their work. And in some cases, including what I think has probably happened here, I'll read a book that I really enjoy, which will take ideas and then build upon and quote from the work of other authors and other books. And I end up being intrigued by those ideas. And then I end up reading a book that's put on like the reference for that book as well, and put that on the list as well. So I think it kind of has snowballed somehow into, me reading several of these types of books kind of in a row. And I'm not sure what the initial book was that led to this string of similarly genred books. But I realized as I was getting this show ready that there was a little bit of overlap between The Element and the last episode on essentialism. That said, both books were excellent, and this book comes from a completely different perspective. And if this genre isn't your thing, then please bear with me. The next book is on a completely different topic. That said, I don't want to prime you to not enjoy this episode or not enjoy hearing about The Element, because it's an exceptional book in its own right, and I just got a ton out of it. Also, I wanted to say today's episode is going to be slightly different. I'm actually getting ready to go on a road trip right now to visit my sister for her birthday. And I'm going to try to squeeze this episode in really quickly. It's probably going to be a little bit shorter. We're not going to do the corners, we're not going to do the ratings and all that stuff. I'm not going to do the things that I didn't like, things I did like. I've just put together just the best, most critical parts of this book, The Element, and I'm just going to deliver it. And also, again, before we get started here, just a little bit of housekeeping. I've noticed, and I wanted to say that there are a lot of new listeners to the show, and I want to welcome those of you who are new or who may be listening for the first time. I hope that you find what you were looking for here, and I will do my best to deliver. For those of you who have been generous enough to share and recommend the show, I can't tell you how grateful I am to you. I am passionate about this project, and it means the world to me that someone somewhere out there is getting some value out of it. Anyway, that is enough of that. Enough for me. Let's get on with the book as we normally do. And I wanted to take a moment, as we usually do, to talk about the author. Now, it's always a pleasure for me to do a little bit of research about the people who write the books that I read. But I have to say that this author he's just got one of my favorite stories. And I'll just tell you it. So Ken Robinson, or I should say, Sir Ken Robinson, because he was knighted for his services to the arts. Sir Ken Robinson was born in Liverpool in the UK in 1950. And at the age of 4, he contracted polio and was permanently disabled. And during that time in the UK, there wasn't much in the way of services for the disabled. So he was sent to a special school for children who were both physically and mentally handicapped in some way. And although his body was made frail by the disease and he had a difficult time walking until his death, his mind was sharp and he did very, very well at school. Ironically, what seemed like a setback in his life actually proved to be a wonderful opportunity. Due to the diverse abilities of the students at his school, the curriculum was extremely varied and by necessity was tailored to the individual needs of the students who attended there. And I should say that Sir Ken Robinson, he came from very kind of working class background. He was one of 7 siblings. His father was actually paralyzed. He became a quadriplegic during an industrial accident, and so his family was really had a difficult time of it. But young Sir Robinson was able to blossom and thrive in ways that his able-bodied counterparts weren't able to, because he had an education that was tailored to his specific needs at that special school that he attended. And eventually someone noticed his talent, and he was able to take a number of exams for gifted students. He performed very well and was able to go to college and have an awesome, successful start to his career. And his love of his arts drove him all the way through a PhD in drama and theater education. And he has written numerous books and published a lot and written a lot for, different publications, and had a very, very successful career, and has inspired a lot of people. And Sir Ken Robinson died in 2020 at age 70 after a short battle with cancer, but he did leave that great legacy of excellence, encouragement, and inspiration. And this book here is part of that legacy. So, what is the element? To quote the author, the element is the meeting point between natural aptitude and personal passion. You can use the term the element to describe the place where the things we love to do and the things we are good at come together. Now, as I said at the beginning, this might sound a little bit outside the box for some of you, and I understand that. Self-help books as a genre seems like they're always trying to sell you on some like magical path to success, but this one really felt different to me. And the reason why is all throughout the book, the author tells stories of real people who found what they were looking for and lived these tremendous lives. And these stories of these people are just a huge part of the value of the book. And you should definitely read this book for that reason. And I'd ask you guys to suspend any disbelief that you might have and entertain the idea for a moment that each of us is a unique individual with unique talents, aptitudes, and opportunities, and that a sort of circumspect look at ourselves with that in mind might do us all some good. So, and after all, so many people live their entire lives doing the things that they don't like, filling their lives with things that they don't need. And then, some of us end up lying awake at night wondering why we aren't happy with our decisions. And I sincerely hope that isn't you right now, dear listener. I hope you're getting everything out of life that you want, and that you are happy as a clam, and you're living according to your best abilities and your passions. But I know that I've been in that position where I'm wondering, why I'm not happy with my choices. I've been there before, and I think that most people spend some time there wondering whether they're heading down the right paths in life. And to quote the author on this point, he says, quote, "I've lost track of the numbers of people I've met who have no real sense of what their individual talents and passions are. They don't enjoy what they're doing now, and they have no idea what actually would fulfill them," end quote. So what's the problem? The author he lays the blame largely at the feet of the modern education system. It's a system that was designed to make children into useful members of society with enough skill and knowledge about what's going on to be able to either be a productive factory worker or a diligent administrator. And much of the education is aimed at sorting kids with hopes and dreams and passions and talents and curiosity into one of those two lanes, either factory worker or administrator. Again, to quote the author on education here, he says, quote, "Public schools were not only created in the interests of industrialism, they were created in the image of industrialism. In many ways, they reflect the factory culture they were designed to support. This is especially true in high schools, where school systems base education on the principles of the assembly line and the efficient division of labor. Schools divide the curriculum into specialist segments. Some teachers install math in the students and others install history. They arrange the day into standard units of time, marked out by the ringing of bells, much like factories announcing the beginning of the workday and the end of break. Students are educated in batches according to age, as if the most important thing they have in common is their date of manufacture. They're given standardized tests at set points and compared with each other before being sent out into the market. I realize this isn't an exact analogy and that it ignores many of the subtleties of the system, but it is close enough," end quote. So, as he said there, it's not a perfect analogy. And to be fair to all the excellent educators out there, there have been a lot of great efforts at making school a more worthy and worthwhile endeavor, and in making it a better fit for the kids who attend. I personally have had some great teachers along the way who went out of their way to instill a love of learning and to cultivate curiosity in myself and my classmates. And those special teachers are the silver lining on what is essentially sort of an outdated and Byzantine system. The main problem is that not every child can be crammed comfortably into the curriculum and environment of the classroom. And he tells the story of a little girl who she just cannot sit still in class. She's having the hardest time paying attention. And eventually she starts to really struggle in school, and her teachers and counselors, they send her to see a therapist, and her mom takes her to this therapist. And after dealing with her for some time, long story short, the therapist says, your daughter is not sick. There's nothing wrong with her. She's a dancer. She loves to move. So send her and have her do some dance lessons. And the mom, fortunately, was wise enough to heed that counsel and to take the girl to do some dance lessons. And she excelled. She was thrilled. She got a lot of joy out of moving her body and in learning to, to be physically, to perfect those movements and to, develop that talent. And her school performance improved dramatically. Eventually, she went on to be the choreographer for like some of the greatest musicals, like Cats and, different things like that. She had a tremendously successful career. And nowadays, she probably would be diagnosed with a mental condition, attention deficit condition and medicated in order to fit better into the school system. And the author actually says something on that. He says, quote, all of this took place in the 1930s. I think now they'd say she had attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and they'd put her on Ritalin or something similar. But the ADHD hadn't been invented at the time. It wasn't an available condition. People didn't know they could have it and they had to get by without it. End quote. And that's him kind of being a little bit snide about ADHD. And I don't really have a dog in the fight on that. I'm not educated enough to know what or whether or anything like that. But I know that there are some kids, and I was one of them, who don't like to sit still all day in a classroom. You find a hard time. I apologize if you can hear my family in the background. As I said, we're getting ready to roll out. The troops are mobilizing. So you're going to hear some mobilization noises there in the background, but hopefully that's okay. So let's move on. Another quote from the author, he says, one size does not fit all. Some of the most brilliant creative people I know did not do well in school. Many of them didn't really discover what they could do and who they really were until after they'd left school and recovered from their education. And I love that he said recovered from their education there, because it just kind of speaks to the damage that can be done when you end up trying to be crammed into this sort of factory floor education against your nature, right? If you're someone who has a hard time with certain things and, that sit still all day and listen to teacher, then, you can really lose a lot of yourself in the education process. And a lot of people do. And just a quick personal story here. Let me tell you about my relationship with math. Now I have a long, sad history. Math and we don't really get along very well. And I thought I was great at math as a kid. I actually really enjoyed math all through grade school. And then one day I took a math placement test, and I thought I was excellent at math. I took a math placement test to sort between a higher level math and a lower level math. And I tested and I wasn't good enough to get into the higher level math. And I went and I talked to my teacher and he said, don't worry about it. You're just not very good at math. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. I had totally internalized that. And this whole time, all through the rest of my education, I was like, I'm not very good at math. So I avoided math. I never cultivated any more math ability. And I avoided doing mental arithmetic. I avoided doing, I basically would try to skate by with as little work as possible as I could in my math classes, because I was like, I have better things to do. I'm not good at math and I'll never be good at math. And I basically just steered myself away from it. And I had this interesting experience as I was studying to take the GMAT to get into business school, where I realized, and there's a math section on it, obviously, half of the test is math actually. And I thought, man, I need to get good at math fast. And I realized that I had no ability. I didn't know long division. I didn't know how to multiply like 3-digit numbers with each other. And my wife became my tutor. And I watched a bunch of YouTube videos of people who are passionate about teaching math. And I realized, wow, from these excellent teachers, right? I realized that I could do math just fine. There's nothing in my brain that prevented me from being able to do math, and with the right teachers, with the right attitude, and, determined to make sure that I could, do well on the GMAT, I was able to perform just fine. And my math, I don't think I'll ever have an excellent aptitude for math. I think I might have missed some of that formative period there, but, I'll keep trying and keep trying to improve. But it has changed my perspective. This experience has changed my perspective. And I realized that I had some teachers along the way that were, either compassionate enough to kind of let me not be good at math, and not push me, or, just derelict in their duty to teach. There were teachers like that too. And so at the end of the day, I never really learned anything in that form. And this is just to show that and I was really young and not mature enough to, take control of my own education the way that I would have liked to have done. I'm a little embarrassed about that actually, but I mean, I was like 11, 12, something like that. So what are you going to do? And probably some of you out there can relate to not being super proud of the decisions that you made as a 12-year-old, or, your wisdom as a 12-year-old. Anyways, let's move on here. So here's the author's contention about education, right? All we're doing is preparing kids to grow up in a world that used to be, right? We're trying to prepare them for that factory workplace environment where you go and you get a job and you work in that job for 30, 40 years and then you retire. And that used to be a good life. And I'm not knocking it at all, because for a long time, that was a good life. You just would go and do whatever it was you did for work for, your 8 hours or whatever. And then you'd go home and you'd have a rich, full life outside of work. But the problem is, work isn't like that anymore. More and more, if you want to have a career, more and more time is required. People are working more and more hours than they ever did. And we're less happy with our careers. We're less happy with our personal lives as well. We're less fulfilled overall. Because even though we've become all this, we've got all this efficiency due to technology, for some reason we end up working more than we had to before. And, it just goes to show that the world has changed. And I love this quote from the author, and it's kind of a lengthy one, but I wanted to really get this in here to kind of put like a cap on the author's discussion about education. So he says, quote, "The fact is that given the challenges we face, education doesn't need to be reformed. It needs to be transformed. The key to this transformation is not to standardize education, but to personalize it, to build achievement on discovering the individual talents of each child, to put students in an environment where they want to learn and where they can naturally discover their true passions. More specifically, what will our children do if we continue to prepare them for life using the old models of education? It's very possible that our children will have multiple careers over the course of their working lives, not simply multiple jobs. Many of them will certainly have jobs we haven't even conceived of yet. Isn't it possible, therefore, our obligation to encourage them to explore as many avenues as possible with an eye toward discovering their true talents and their true passions?" It's our obligation to encourage them to do that. Not possible. When the only thing we know about the future is that it will be different, we would all be wise to do the same. We need to think very differently about human resources and about how we develop them if we are to face these challenges. We need to embrace the element. Now, and he goes on to say, children starting school this year, and he's talking about 2009, will be retiring in 2070. No one has any idea of what the world will look like in 10 years' time, let alone in 2070. There are two major drivers of change: technology and demography. The world is changing faster than ever in our history. Our best hope for the future is to develop a new paradigm of human capacity to meet a new era of human existence. We need to evolve a new appreciation of the importance of nurturing human talent, along with an understanding of how talent expresses itself differently in every individual. We need to create environments in our schools, in our workplaces, and in our public offices where every person is inspired to grow creatively. We need to make sure that all people have the chance to do what they should be doing, to discover the element in themselves and in their own way." End quote. Now, I love that. Because the world is changing rapidly. For me, as a person who's really close to entering the workforce in a professional capacity, trained as a lawyer and a business administrator, I don't know what the marketplace is going to look like in 2 years, 5 years, let alone 10, 20, 30 years. And the best asset that I can have going into an environment like that, a rapidly changing environment, is the ability to adapt and the ability to be dynamic, right? And the current modern education system teaches you anything but dynamism. It teaches you conformity. It teaches you how to jump through hoops, to do what you're told, and then to wait for instructions, right? And the workplace, the landscape of our modern world is changing so fast that no one's going to be adequately able to give instructions, and let alone follow them in a new environment. And so I'm really skeptical of what modern education is providing to children these days. And my wife and I have tried to offset it in our own family with our own kids by taking on a lot of their education in ourselves. In fact, we've taken on all of their education ourselves for now. And we're really happy with the results we've seen. Our children are developing who they are, and we're able to tailor the things that we teach them to the things that interest them. And I'm hopeful that will be a wonderful experience for them, and I'm confident that it will. And that's something that parents are going to have to think about when they send their kids off, because the modern education system is just not up to the task of building for the future. It's not up to the task of building competent, dynamic professionals who can thrive in an ever-changing environment. That's just not what it does. So let's talk a little bit about what a true education would look like. And the author says here, quote, "Farmers base their livelihoods on raising crops, but farmers do not make plants grow. They don't attach the roots, glue on the petals, or color the fruit. The plant grows itself. Farmers and gardeners provide the conditions for growth. Good farmers know what these conditions are, and bad ones don't." End quote. That's it. And you think, obviously, this is a metaphor for teachers and the children that they're educating. The kid will grow one way or the other. And it's not the teachers who make the kids grow. The teachers aren't shaping the minds of the kids. Well, they are, but a lot of times they're doing it clumsily and without regard for where that mind is trying to grow and what the underlying foundation of it is. Like the bad farmer can, provide bad conditions for growth. The teacher can do the same. And bad conditions are ones that are contrary to the nature of the child. And so, trying to cram those kids into this mold, it's not really going to work out in the long run. And it hasn't. I think we can see that, there are a lot of people who have grown up in that education system who are now ill fit for the society that they exist in now. A lot of people have gone to years and years of college and taken on years and years of student debt. And then they emerge from college after doing everything that they were told to do as well as they could. And there's nothing for them. The job isn't there. The world doesn't look like it was promised it would look, and we're in kind of a pickle. And the people who can't adapt and find something else to do, there's a lot of strain there, and a lot of I think resentment as well. And that's not something that we want to cultivate in an entire generation of young people. So I want to tell a story that the author told in the book about a group of kids who are putting on a nativity play at their school for Christmas time. And this is in the UK, where, they have an outlawed nativity plays in school. I'm not going to say anything more about that, as far as, how ironic it is that in the United States, we've outlawed okay, actually, I am going to take a moment here and get up on my soapbox. So I spent part of my life in the UK. I grew up there. My father's Scottish, and I lived in the UK until I was, moved to America for high school. And the early part of my education, I had a lot of what was called religious education. And I learned about all sorts of different religions. I learned about Hinduism and Judaism and Islam and, Sikhism and Christianity. And I had a great experience learning about all these peoples and cultures and the deepest held beliefs all around the world. And it has shaped the way that I see those people around the world. And it is astounding to me that the United States has outlawed the teaching of religion in school, because religion is such a fundamentally important attribute of basically, the vast majority of people who live and have ever lived, that it's mind-boggling that they would try to strip that out of education. You can't strip it out of reality. You can't strip it out of life. It is a fundamental part of the human experience. And the fact that they've tried to bleach it out of education it's educational malpractice, regardless of what your religious beliefs are. It's educational malpractice to just ignore that facet of humanity. It blows my mind. Anyways, so these kids are, performing the nativity, and one of the kids is sick, and so he's not able to attend. And so another kid is put in as one of the wise men, and he doesn't know his lines. And the teacher tries to coach him through his lines right before they get on. And the kid's like, "Oh man, that word is not an easy word for me to remember." Right. And so they go on. And the kid says, "All right, but I'm just going to do what I'm going to do here." And the first kid says, "I have brought you gold." And the second kid says, "I have brought you myrrh." And this third kid, the substitute, he just, shuffles on up there and says, "Frank sent this." Obviously, he's trying to say frankincense, but he got it wrong and he didn't know. But the important thing is he wasn't afraid to try anyway. He didn't just stand there and freeze. And that's a cool thing here. And the author says this. So he says, quote, "Kids aren't particularly worried about being wrong. If they aren't sure what to do in a particular situation, they'll just go at it and see how things turn out. this is not to suggest that being wrong is the same thing as being creative. Sometimes being wrong is just being wrong. What is true is that if you're not prepared to be wrong, you'll never come up with anything original. And we could all take a page out of this kid's book here, right? Too often we're so worried about checking all the boxes that we fail to see that there's value in tinkering around and thinking outside the box. And also there's value in just jumping in, just trying, right? In this case, Frank sent this as a little bit off the mark, right? And I'm sure it was a laugh for all the parents there. But, having that courage is an important thing. And you can stumble on something awesome, right? And you might be wrong, but we didn't get here as a species by sticking to tradition and being afraid to branch out, right? We'd all still be sitting around in caves, clubbing each other over the head if someone didn't decide to do things a little bit differently now and then. And the cumulative effect of that willingness to explore is the central hallmark of our species. And it's accessible to all of us as long as we aren't afraid to be wrong. Now, I wanted to take a moment here and talk about the necessity of good mentors when it comes to education, because that has really made the difference for me. It's probably made a difference to you out there. It's made a difference to a lot of people. And the difference between a mentor and a teacher is that a lot of times a teacher is just assigned to, like he said, they're in that industrial role of now sit down, specimen 247. It's time for you to learn enough mathematics to run the drill press, right? And maybe that's a little too cynical, but a mentor is something different. And these are not mutually exclusive, right? I've had most of my good mentors actually have been teachers and professors. And the central role of a mentor is to encourage us, to cultivate us, to help us find opportunities. And people who take on those roles, honestly, I think it's the best thing you can do. If you have the chance to be a mentor to someone, never miss that chance, right? It's what you will be remembered for. It's the main driving force of humanity, is people who have been there and done that, having the decency and the love of man to take some time to teach somebody who doesn't know what they're doing a little bit about how life works. That is what humanity is at its best, I think. And this is a quote from the author. Quote, "The role of a mentor is encouragement. Mentors lead us to believe that we can achieve something that seemed improbable or impossible to us before we met them. They don't allow us to succumb to self-doubt for too long, or the notion that our dreams are too large for us. They stand by to remind us of the skills we already possess and what we can achieve if we continue to work hard." Now, I think mentorship is essentially the most important part of life, really, right? Like if you have the opportunity to be a mentor to someone, never miss that, right? Because the mentors it's one of the best gifts that you can give to someone. If you have this experience, if you've already been there, you can help to shepherd them along. And if you have the opportunity to learn from someone wise who's willing to share their time and their talents and energy with you, absolutely take them up on that. These relationships are what humanity is all about. And I really believe that. I've been very, very fortunate and very blessed throughout my life to have good mentors, as I said, and many of you have as well. And most of the stories that a lot of people tell, including what this author says in the book, is that, excellent mentors, there's no substitute for that. That is a true education in many ways. And I just wanted to put in a quick plug for mentorship there. It's just a short thing that I wanted to say. Just a reminder to you, if you have access to a mentor, don't waste that opportunity. And if you have the opportunity to mentor someone else, rise to that opportunity. Be that person. Give back some of what has been given to you, because that's what it's all about. Anyways, let's move on. Let's shift gears a little bit and start talking about these, the passion, the part of the element, right? Because it says you pair up the passion with the aptitude. So let's talk about passion first. And I'm going to give a little quote here from the author. So quote, "Musicians love the sounds they make. Natural writers love words. Dancers love movement. Mathematicians love numbers. Entrepreneurs love making deals. Great teachers love teaching. This is why people who fundamentally love what they do don't think of it as work in the ordinary sense of the word. They do it because they want to, and because when they do, they are in their element." End quote. So it's kind of difficult. And the author acknowledges throughout the book how difficult it is to find your passion. If you say, what am I passionate about? And nothing jumps to mind immediately, then, you have to explore a little bit. And a lot of times it's not a matter of finding new things to be passionate about, but it's exploring the things that you were passionate about before, things changed. And so a good tip to find your passion is to find what you love by looking at what you love to do. If you're spending your time on useless things though, right? Like social media and video games, like, I spend way too much time on video games, but if you're spending your time on useless things that aren't moving you forward, and they like I play too many video games, but I'm not passionate about video games, right? A lot of people watch too much Netflix, but you're not passionate about Netflix. If someone asks you what you're passionate about, or if you're even honest with yourself, like, what is my passion? You're not gonna be watching TV. No, you're not. So cut those things out of your life for a while. If you're trying to find your passion, you got to cut those things out. Forbid yourself from using them. Make yourself, here's the ticket, right? And here's the ticket for a lot of things, but you got to make yourself sit on your hands and be bored. Look at the ceiling, then look at the walls, trace a crack or something, then look out the window, be bored. Be bored. We don't know how to do that anymore, and it's killing our creativity. It's disconnecting us from our souls. Now, I personally, as I said, waste time. But lately, through some of the things that I picked up through these books that I've been reading, I have gone out of my way to learn to take a meditative time in the morning, to be still, to study, to pray in my case, and to seek revelation and inspiration, and to find that those things that come to you when you're being still and quiet. And those things can't get in. Your passion it'll sit out on the doorstep and sit out there and rot while you are playing video games or watching Netflix or, arguing with someone on Facebook, or all these things that we do to waste our time and our energy, cluing yourself into whatever, gossip or, outrage porn of the day is. Just keep yourself, or, literal porn of the day. I don't know. Whatever it is that you're doing that is like wasting your time and taking all of your energy and focus, that's taking directly away from your passion. And you're selling yourself short by spending all of your spare time on these things, right? So learn to be still, learn to meditate, and eventually you'll feel a tug towards something that you find interesting. You'll start to think about things, and the things that you think about, those are clues, right? And if you do this for long enough, then eventually that smothered little kid inside of you who's been beaten down, by the education system and by life and all the demands and all this and that, eventually that smothered kid will start to reel against the boredom and of the moment. And you will remember those deep inclinations. That little kid will come out and say, oh, I want to, and that I want to, right there, that's your passion, right? That is a good clue to what your passion is. And eventually, as I said, this imagination that you were born with, it'll start to reawaken, maybe faintly at first, but it'll grow stronger and stronger as you practice this art of just being alone with yourself. Be alone with your thoughts. Many of us don't even really know ourselves because we have this job that we were told to do, to pay these bills that we were told to pay, to get these things that we were told to want. And we spend our spare time on the opium of Netflix and video games and social media. And then we go to sleep and we wake up and we do it again the next day. We are missing ourselves in this lifestyle. Many of us. Some of you are probably doing a lot better than I am at that. But the power of cultivating that imagination and finding that passion again, it's undeniable. To quote the author here, quote, as soon as we have the power to release our minds from the immediate here and now, in a sense, we are free. We are free to revisit the past, free to reframe the present, and free to anticipate a whole range of possible futures. Imagination is the foundation of everything that is uniquely and distinctively human. It is the basis of language, the arts, the sciences, systems of philosophy, and all the vast intricacies of human culture. Because imagination is vitally important to our lives. Through imagination, we can visit the past, contemplate the present, anticipate the future, and we can do something else that is profound and of unique significance. We can create. End quote. Like I said, give it a try. I did it recently. It has really opened my eyes about who I am at the deepest level. And I got to admit something to you guys. I don't think I'm a lawyer at my deepest level. I don't want to alarm my wife who's listening to this. I've got to find a way, after all this law school and all this effort, I got to find a way to make that all work for me. And I will, I'm going to get creative, I'm going to get dynamic and find something that I'm passionate about that will leverage these things that I picked up. And you can do the same, right? It's never too late for you to find your passion and the skills that you've picked up along the way. There's never any downside to learning to be really good at something. But once you've remembered your passion, the things you love, it's time to explore what it would mean to pair that passion up with an aptitude. And Fortunate for humanity, aptitude has proven to be a little bit more robust than passion when it comes to the education system trying to stomp it out of us. Many people are at least somewhat aware of what their talents are. And it's a virtuous cycle, right? It comes from pairing your passion and your ability, and then you explore your passion more, right? Your passions they drive you to try something. And then that attempt lets you discover whether you have an aptitude for it or not. And if you do, then that's great. Then you'll try more and your passion will grow and your aptitude will grow, and boom, 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 boom. That's how you see people who are really, really good at something, is that, they have a passion to try it. Then they discover an aptitude, and the aptitude grows the passion grows the aptitude, and boom, 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 virtuous cycle. Right. And if you do that, that's awesome. Right. And if you don't know what a passion or an aptitude pairing is, that's all right, because you just need to explore a little more. Everybody has one. Every person comes into this world unique and different, genetically unlike any person who ever lived, and your circumstances are unlike any person who ever lived. You specifically are, it's not just like you're 1 in 8 billion, right? You're 1 in an infinite. If you were to meet every human who ever lived and every human who will yet live, no two people will be exactly alike. You are you, and there is no substitute for you. Now, to give a little example of this from my own life, because that's the only experience I have to draw on, I've always been just in love with music. And from my earliest days, I can remember plinking around on a little toy rinky-dink keyboard. Would make up little songs, sing little songs, and I'd just rock out to the awesome music that my parents listened to, 80s music. And my passion transitioned slowly but surely to an aptitude with practice, right? And I eventually, asked my parents to buy me a guitar, and they did. They were wonderful parents who supported me in that, and I worked very hard to learn that. I played literally, that Bryan Adams song "Summer of '69," where he says, "I played until my fingers bled." I know what it means to play the guitar until your fingers bleed. Like literally, I remember. I remember the relief when my ring finger on my left hand started to bleed on the strings, because it was lubricant for the rest of my fingers on the strings. That might sound really disgusting and also super metal. And at the time, believe me, I thought it was super metal. I thought it was really cool. And that was kind of the music that I was into at the time. I really like, shredding. And so bleeding on your strings while you're shredding on the guitar, that feels pretty cool when you're a 15-year-old boy with long black hair and you're in a hardcore band. I took lots of pictures and put that up on the internet, and then my mom told me to take them down because they were gross. Anyways, moving on here. I loved the guitar. I loved it. I loved music. I loved writing songs, and I worked hard. I worked very hard, but to my horror, I learned during my teen years that I am not a talented singer. In fact, I am borderline tone deaf. And that was a difficult thing to deal with at the time, because I was putting so much of myself, my time and my effort into learning to make the music. And to this day, I'm working on the singing. And while I'm sad to report that I haven't improved very much over the years, I did come to one realization a number of years ago. A guitar always sings in key, right? All I have to do is tune it, and it sounds perfect. The guitar is not held back by my lack of singing ability. And so I focused my effort. I noticed that I didn't have an aptitude for the singing, so I focused my effort on the playing of the guitar. And I learned other instruments too, bass and drums and these other instruments. I realized that they sounded great, even if I personally didn't sound great while singing. So even though that path that I wanted to follow, this is the example, right? That of the path that I wanted to follow of a world-class rock star with a killer set of pipes, that's blocked to me due to lack of aptitude. But there's really no cap on how good a guitar player I can be with work. I do have a strong talent for that, a strong aptitude for that. And looking back at old music that I made, I've come to realize that I've written some super sick guitar riffs over the year. I'm not bragging, right? Because if you listen to them, you might be like, meh. Right. And you probably would be like, meh. But what's most important, though, is that I've come to understand that the music that I make, while it's not fit for, international rock star level consumption, right, it makes me happy. I personally jam out to the music that I make. I have enough talent to make the things that genuinely make me happy and fill up my cup. It's a passion. And when I spend that time playing, it frees my mind to think about other things. It's meditative, almost prayer-like to me. When I'm playing the guitar, I'm in my element. It adds value to my life. So what do you do that's like that? What do you do that fills your cup? What, as a kid, did you pick up and then put down because that's the thing. I put the guitar down once I realized I couldn't sing. It was kind of heartbreaking to me, and I put the guitar down for years, and I only picked it up, again, as a grown man. And rediscover that love of it. Right. So maybe you have something like that. Maybe you have something that you love, that you're passionate about, that you worked hard at, but you put it down and you walked away from it. And once you find out what that is, it's time for you to figure out how to use it to your advantage. Right. And even if it just plays a supporting role in your life and doesn't make you rich, your passion will add value to you. It will add value to your life because it will help you to live more according to your nature. Right. And for some people, I know for a lot of people, it's sports. Like you put a lot of your heart and soul into sports to becoming a good athlete. And that's great. And, one of the cruel things about life is that eventually your body will slow down to the point where you can't really enjoy sports the way that you used to. But even if you're already to that point where you're past your prime, athletically or whatever, it doesn't mean that you can't, do pickup games in the community, an old man's league, right? And that will add value. And then when it's time for you to slow down, it doesn't mean that you can't find other ways to engage with that, right? Just like I said before, become a mentor. There's high demand for coaches in this world. And if you love the game and you can and you got a lot out of it for years and years and years and years, and now you lost a step and you're not able to play the way you used to, coach it. Find the kids who were just like you were and be the person who will give them value. Teach them a trick or two, some of that old man skill that you have, right? Or old woman skill, whatever you got there, teach them. Add value to them, help to cultivate them, and you will see the joy that brings to them. And that will bring you joy as well, because you're still in the game. You're still in the game. It's a different role, but that passion and that aptitude, even if, like I said, even if it doesn't make you $1 million, right? It's beautiful and it's worth doing. You do something for the love of it, right? And that's the thing here. Don't be ashamed of being an amateur at something, right? To quote the author here, quote, "The word amateur derives from the Latin word amator, which means lover, devoted friend, or someone who is in avid pursuit of an objective. In the original sense, an amateur is someone who does something for the love of it." End quote. Embrace amateurism, right? Focus on the love part of amateur. And, if you are able to find a way that your passions and your aptitudes align, and that they align in a way that you're like, hey, this could really be something, this could be something valuable monetarily, then it's time for you to leverage those newly awakened, imaginations into something ambitious, right? If you find that your passion and your aptitude connect in a way that you're like, oh man, I could make a living doing this. Like I'm really, really good at this and I really love doing it. And I found a creative, imaginative way to use this passion and aptitude to add value to somebody else's life, then that value is worth some money. And you got to set your sights high and you got to get to work. For most of us, and this comes from the book, he says, for most of us, the problem isn't that we aim too high and fail. It's just the opposite. We aim too low and succeed. Right? And I've been guilty of that, where I'm like, I'm like, I better play it safe. I better be conservative here. I better not, take that long shot. I better not shoot from half court. Right. But if you got the passion and the aptitude and you see a vision, a path to that success, there's no reason you shouldn't go for it. Right. Take your shot. Don't be afraid to be like that kid in the nativity, right? Take your shot, even if, or especially if, right, it feels crazy. Another quote from the book, he says, one of the enemies of creativity and innovation, especially in relation to our own development, is common sense. Now, don't be afraid. This is something I have to keep telling myself, right? Because I'm in a position where I've invested heavily in my education and I'm over leveraged. I'm in debt. I've got a lot of pressure on me financially to perform in a very specific set of ways. And I have explored my own aptitudes and passions, and I have discovered some things about myself, relearned some things about myself. When I was a kid, my brother and I used to play this game where we would make paper airplanes, and we formed a little airline company, and we'd take our paper airplanes and we'd make big ones and small ones and tape big wings on the jumbo jets that we were making and stuff like that. And we would shuttle our toys around our house to different airports that we built. And we did that with the express intent of running a business. And we would restrict ourselves at first. We'd say, well, we have to start with a couple of small little planes here and move small toys, small distances. And then, we would pay ourselves money for those trips with our toys. And we would keep track of our money, meticulous track of our money, actually, surprisingly for how young we were, keep track of our money. And when we had enough money, we would say, oh, that's enough money for us to buy a slightly bigger plane. And then we would build ourselves, a little bit of a bigger plane. We would fly a little bit further. And we would just kind of snowball this. And we'd play day after day these types of games where we were just building on the frameworks that we had invented for ourselves, fake money and fake company and fake planes, moving toys around the house. But we were little businessmen. And when I look back at that, when I remember that in a meditative moment, I remember he and I playing that game. And I thought, we were businessmen. I'm a businessman. I think down to the marrow of my bones, that's what I want to do. I want to build things. I want to have that experience of, starting really small and making good moves and gathering a little bit of money and building a little bit bigger and snowballing and snowballing and snowballing. And that's what I'm going to do, you guys. I'm proud to announce that whatever it is that I do, it's going to be that, because that's what I came into this world wanting to do, passionate about. I could spend hours and hours and hours and hours doing that as a game. Now imagine what I can do as a professional, highly trained with a knowledge of law and business, and it's a game to me. I'm excited, you guys. I don't have anything right now, obviously, right? If I did, I would have already done something, but I'm going to find it. I'm going to keep that meditative attitude up. I'm going to find something and then I'm going to do it and I'm going to love it. That's the goal anyways, right? And it's all about finding worthy aims for your outlets, right? And if you want to change the world, this is a quote from the book, quote, if you want to change the world, who do you begin with, yourself or others? He says, I believe if we begin with ourselves and do the things that we need to do and become the person we can be, we have a much better chance of changing the world for the better. So, my friends, take a big swing. Find out who you are, find out what you can do, find those passions and those talents, that aptitude, that element, and take a big swing. Risk it all to do what you love, because this is your life. It isn't a trial run. There are no do-overs. At the end of your life, you probably won't sit around celebrating how cautious you were, how conservative you were with your choices. You probably won't jump for joy that your savings account is set to drain to the last penny within a day or two of your death. Right? Now, I have to acknowledge the existence of people whose spirit animal is some kind of an accountant. And maybe you truly are passionate about making numbers work together and living at maximum monetary efficiency. And if that's you, then go for it. If that's what you're passionate about, then go for it. And not only go for it, but help other people in that pursuit as well, because that's important. Right? It's really important. And I don't want to sound like this is some kind of like a dumb pipe dream or something like that. Right? Because you gotta, the world has restrictions, right? It really does, sincerely. But ask yourself, what could you accomplish if every day you put the best hours of your day into doing what you were truly passionate about? Can you imagine how happy and full you'd be if you did for work something that meant the world to you? Now, like I said, there are barriers to this way of life. Practicalities have to be honored and observed. They have to be. Bills have to be paid. A certain level of fiscal responsibility is required if you want to eat, to have the bare minimum to survive. Do those things. Do your duty. I'm not saying you should abdicate your duty in favor of something that you like doing, right? But if you've got a passion and it's paired with an aptitude, then you got to find a way to lever that into what it is that you do, right? Find some kind of use for it, even if it just means that you use it to really unwind properly, over the weekend or at the end of a work day, and become a really good, have it free you from, maybe the job you do isn't so hot, and that's fine, right? Every job has to be done, right? But if you can find a way, and nobody's passionate about data entry, for example, right? But if you can find a passion that you can still have in your life, that find your element, it can add value even if you don't love your day job, right? It can help you be a better, person. It can help you be a better spouse and parent and mentor and friend. You can really, really maximize who you are if you lean into that, because life isn't measured in the bills that we pay. Right? At the end of the day. So find your passion, pair it up with an aptitude, and find a way to make that what you do with your life. Technology in this day and age has blessed us with a tremendous amount of productivity. Fewer and fewer working hours are required to survive now compared to the way that our ancestors lived. And with the rise of AI and automation, and like I said, we don't even know what the world's going to look like 10 years from now, let alone 20, 30, 40 years. If you're a young person right now, you got to assume that, technology is going to make the landscape completely different before you're even in your middle age, right? And if you're an older person, then you've already seen that. You've already seen how technology has changed everything, and you've had to adapt and make changes, right? So just assume that change is the new normal, is what I'm saying. And I think it's reasonable to expect that the necessary work of subsistence is probably going to it's likely going to be performed by machines in the future. AI and automation are becoming much more sophisticated. And so what will be left for human beings? Well, what's left to us is to add value to our existence, to our lives, by creating worthwhile things. Now, imagine if you were, here's a quote, right? Quote, "To make the element available to everyone, we need to acknowledge that each person's intelligence is distinct from the intelligence of every other person on the planet, that everyone has a unique way of getting in the zone and a unique way of finding the element," end quote. Like I said, you are one of a kind. And imagine a world where everyone was doing exactly what they were best suited for. What diversity, what variety could we enjoy if we were doing that? Imagine if every child's particular peculiarities and proclivities were promoted. I wrote that line for alliteration. I'm going to say it again. Imagine a world where every child's particular peculiarities and proclivities were promoted. I'm better at alliteration in written form. I shouldn't have tried to quote that. Anyways, something to remember. But imagine that. Imagine even if you're just too much of a practicalist, right? Imagine the efficiency of every human being working at the peak of their ability and talent because they love what they do. Imagine that efficiency even. And imagine if every ounce of genius was harnessed towards the betterment of all mankind. Imagine if everyone was doing just exactly what they were passionate about, if we were all in our element, right? It sounds like a pipe dream. And maybe it is. I'm willing to admit that it is. I'm willing to admit that this is impossible, that it's a dumb idea. But what a dream. And even if it's impossible, I've got to think that it would still be reaching for. Even if we can't get there, I've got to think that at least trying it out yourself, even if we can't persuade everyone else to do it, if you and I, dear listener, if we try this and just give it a shot, even if it's not you, even if we don't go all in, what we do with this, effort to embrace our element, it's going to add value. It's going to make you happier. It's making me happier already. If you try it, it's going to make you happier. Guarantee it, right? Because you're passionate about it. If you do the things you're passionate about and the things you have good aptitude for, like I said, you'll get that spiral of increasing returns, right? You'll get that virtuous cycle where your passion begets aptitude, begets passion, begets aptitude. And before long, you're going to be great at something you love. And what better life is there than that? Now we're done. Let's wrap it up. I love this book. I hope you've gotten something out of it too. And the parting thought for today, sorry, like I said, we didn't do the corners. I actually ran longer than I intended to here. I kind of ended up rambling a little bit. But we didn't do the corners, didn't do the rating. Obviously, you know that I love this book, so the rating would have been high. But the parting thought today is just a simple quote from Marcus Aurelius, that great Stoic philosopher and emperor of Rome. Quote, "The soul does violence to itself when it acts contrary to its nature." End quote. Simple, true, straightforward. Are you acting according to your nature? I hope this episode has given you something to think about. It's definitely given me a lot to think about. This book was tremendous. I highly recommend it. The specific stories in there about different people overcoming different things and the wisdom that they were able to share and that the author was able to put together. Fantastic. I highly recommend this book. Now, thank you all so much for listening, for supporting the podcast. It means the world to me to see it grow and to know that you guys are getting something out of these books that I love. Take care of yourself. And remember, be bored today. Get in touch with that imagination again. Remember your passion. Pair it up with an aptitude, a talent. Set big goals. Don't be afraid to be wrong, because even if you are wrong, you'll still be more in line with your nature. You'll still be more happy. In short, find your element. Have a good day, my friends. You deserve it.